Okay, from that political conversation, let us shift gears now and let's get to talk about renewable energy. And to be specific, we'll be looking at shaping Kenya's renewable energy. And joining me via Zoom for that conversation is one engineer, Paul Simiyu, who is the managing director, Sedimental Energy Company. Welcome to the program, sir, if you can hear me. Good morning.
Good morning, Virginia, and thank you for the warm welcome today.
All right, it's a pleasure to have you on the show this morning. If we can just begin by first defining what exactly renewable energy is.
Thank you. Maybe from a class point of view, renewable energy is the kind of energy that we harness majorly from the environment that cannot be depleted or can be used from time to time without having to be depleted from generation to generation. Comparatively, we can talk about non-renewable energy, and these are basically depletable sources of electricity or energy you can be able to have from our environment. Majorly, for example, we can talk about oil and gas. Oil and gas is a non-renewable source of energy because the sources of oil can be depleted from time to time. But when we talk about wind, we talk about sun, we talk about hydro, which is water. When you talk about geothermal, which is steam from the earth. When you talk about sometimes biomass, those are some of the examples of renewable energy. Thank you.
Okay. Why is it important, to get to transition to renewable energy? What is the impact on the environment and the economy as well?
I think majorly the world is grappling the crisis of climate change effect. We also grappling with, the so-called energy poverty, especially the focus on Africa. And we're also looking at the economic sense of ensuring that our lives, our industries, our institutions of learning, our institutions of workplaces, studios, and all that can be able to be powered or can be sustained to function properly as it is. But majorly, effects of working from using non-renewable energy sources to renewable energy sources are majorly driven by the cost and the environment. We have had a crisis caused by climate change effects, extreme temperatures that make our environments uninhabitable, floods, droughts, poor health coming from respiratory-related diseases, acidity in our oceans where sometimes fish and other aquatic lives are lost. All these are coming because of what we call carbon emissions that are basically produced when you burn fuel-based or non-renewable energy sources to generate electricity. We are talking about coal, we are talking about oil and gas, we are talking about even some elements of biomass. Yeah. So in order for us to ensure that our environment is kept clean and we are able to save our environment or Earth for our future generations, we need to transition from using those conventional or non-renewable sources of electricity or energy to modern, conventional, renewable sources of energy. And these examples like solar, like wind, like hydroelectricity or hydro energy, like geothermal electricity, in order to ensure that we do minimize, if not eliminate, the elimination of the so-called greenhouse gas effects to our atmosphere and help to keep the stability of our Earth's temperatures within the range where human life can be sustainably be so normal. But also look at the cost. Oil and gas specifically keeps on fluctuating. You've heard about the increment of oil, whether in crude oil or in finished products. All over the country, sometimes, whenever we are always trading, like 14th of every month, the announcement of prices from oil and diesel and petroleum from IPRA. We're talking about coal. We are talking about transportation logistics of these particular sources moving from one source of generation to another. We're going to use them, and they're not cheap. For us, in order to produce and keep our industries running at an affordable rate, to make sure that our institutions are able to run and reduce the cost of electricity and energy in general, we have to transit from these expensive non-renewable sources to cheaper, affordable renewable sources. And also availability. Most of renewable sources are quite available, especially like, for example, Kenya, in Africa in general, we have abundant natural sources that we can be able to harness our electricity from renewably. Look about the sun, talk about the sun, talk about the wind, talk about geothermal in our Rift Valley escarpments, all the way from Naivasha to Baringo to even Menengai, Longonot, and all those areas. Look about water. We have some good permanent rivers, unless we are depleting them through deforestation. And every day we have the rains, every day we have the sun, every day we have the wind. All these sources are affordably can be able to be, harnessed to produce and provide the so-called energy that's required without depleting them, albeit at a very low cost. The production cost of electricity, for example, using solar and wind, is always below 5 shillings per unit. That's per kilowatt hour. Compared to the cost of producing electricity from oil and gas and diesel generators, which is above 35 shillings per unit, then definitely you can be able to see that non-renewable sources are probably 70-80% cheaper than compared to non-renewable sources. Thank you.
All right, I hear you on that. Now, as sedimental energy, you work towards trying to reduce the use of non-renewable energy. Maybe what are some of the impact? What is the impact rather that you are striving to make, in Kenya?
All right. At Centec, just a brief history. We have been operational in the country for the last 9 years, spread across Kenya in 4 different branches. That is in Nakuru, in Mombasa, in Western Kenya, based in Bungoma, and soon opening up a place in Eldoret and Kisumu. And we basically rely on the sun to be able to produce electricity to supply to individuals, to institutions, to industries, to even power roads in what we call off-grid and on-grid and decentralized power solutions or captive power solutions. And the major driving force behind this is the cost of electricity and energy in general in Kenya is quite high. Buying electricity in Kenya per unit is over above 30 shillings a unit. But compared to own production, which is producing your own electricity using solar and other renewable sources, your cost of production in what we call the levelized cost of energy is below 5 shillings, which is basically ranges between 3 shillings to 5 shillings. And therefore at Centec, we are striving to crusade the adoption of this solution in order to ensure that residential commercial centers operate affordably and are able to run their operations daily without interruption through blackouts, but also be able to contribute the efforts in cleaning up our environment by using this clean source of energy. And by so doing, we have been able to partner with several institutions. We are some of the people that are powering hospitals in the country, ensuring that there's stable, cheaper, affordable electricity to ensure that our hospitals can be able to run on cheap electricity, but also uninterruptedly so, without having to resort to genset power whenever there are blackouts. Recently, we have partnered up with Kenya Commercial Bank Group to ensure that our institutions of learning, where our children are going to, in our primary schools, in our high schools, in our tertiary institutions, can be able to learn or carry out their education activities in an interrupted free manner, affordably so, by funding and financing these institutions to adopt solar. And this is very, very important because our institutions receive very low capitation. Population in our institutions has really gone up. Principals are finding sometimes difficult to balance their budgets from the school fees payments that is capited at a certain figure and also getting allocation from the government at a certain figure. If you look at the cost of life and the cost of operations across running our institutions of learning is quite high, and sometimes these principals cannot be able to manage. But with the input of our innovation, with the funding with KCB, we are able to install these particular solutions across our learning institutions countrywide freely, or without collateral, at a very low interest rate, with a long payment period, and enable our institutions to have adequate sustainability in terms of learning, in terms of power availability, ensure that there is security in the institutions, and also they can be able to save, especially on biomass, because most of our institutions cook using firewood. And it's estimated that countrywide, by the time 1 year ends, a typical school can be able to cut down trees worth 3 acres. Now we have over almost 40,000 schools in this country. You can imagine the amount of deforestation that's happening in the country and the effect it's having on our environment through climate change and removing our major source of carbon sink absorption. And therefore, with these particular effects, we have been able to partner and work from over now 50 institutions that are running within our solutions, and they're able to save our environment, but also be able to affordably soar using solar electricity. Apart from that, we have also partnered up with the Kenya National Highways Agency, the school, KENHA, to ensure that our roads, which is also our major sources of carbon emissions through our vehicular traffic that consumes hydrocarbons in terms of fuel, can be able to be kept clean by ensuring that our roads are lit up using standalone solar solutions in street lighting aspects. This, among others, are our major contributions. And so far, we've been able to install over 40 megawatts worth of such particular solutions for the last 9 years.
Mm-hmm. You're clearly doing a really, really good job. Now, as you've just mentioned, you are solarizing schools. Maybe what gave you that push to start this initiative on, just working with schools?
Virginia, we have grown up from environments where probably 10, 15 years ago, electrification in the country has not been that much covered. But also, we are talking about 100% transition, especially with the advent of free primary education and 100% transition to high schools. And there's also the capping of school fees imposed by the Ministry of Education in order to caution parents from having to probably pay higher high school fees to afford education for their children. And at the same time, we are entrusting our children to schools where they're spending 9 months in an environment sometimes that is faced by difficulties in terms of expenditure, but also ensuring that they have adequate learning materials, which at night can only happen when there's availability of electricity. Ensure that they are safe, because if the schools are not well lit and probably their CCTV systems and other kind of security measures are not 100% active, intrusion, incidences of insecurity breach can be able to happen. And lastly, the cost of running these schools, because energy forms the bulk. Apart from food, the next thing that troubles most of the head teachers and heads of institutions is the cost of electricity, and then the unreliability part. Combined with these 4 factors, we realize that helping our learning institutions to close the gap in reducing the expense they spend on electricity can be substantial in ensuring that schools remain profitably or probably reliably operated in terms of expense management when it comes to energy, but also ensure that there's adequate security and adequate provision of the learning environment for children to learn and be taught from an environment where there's energy that's available 100%. And therefore, because of this push, we approached together with our partners at the Ministry of Energy and specific institutions to be able to adopt this particular solution. And likely a lot of them have been able to adopt them. We are talking about major schools in the country like Friends School Kapsinga, like the Girls High School, like Maturu in Western, like MPC promotion centers here in Nairobi, Fadhili group of schools, and even universities like Daystar University, Kabarak University, Kenya Methodist University, among others.
All right, that's good progress so far, and everything comes with its own fair of challenges. Maybe if you can speak about the challenges that you get to encounter in just implementing these solar solutions.
Well, it's true, Gina. Every silver lining has a dark something. There's something that goes in that light.
Yeah.
But I know the information access towards the capability of our energy solutions, specifically solar and the renewables, comes with probably inadequate capacity to enhance in terms of technical availability, and also the understanding on what these solutions can be able to do. You've realized sometimes people talk about solar just being able to power home or probably just power a few loads and cannot be able to run institutions. And also the second aspect about that is the capitation. First, when you talk about the capability of the solutions we provide, we come across sites where people think we cannot be able to power their schools or their hospitals or their hotels, so they are also using solar because probably it's a smaller source of electricity supply. But because of our technical background and the ability to harness and the innovation around the capacity, we have been able to now demonstrate adequately that solar can be able to power anything. The same way you can be able to get power to power your electricity from the grid, to power your hospital, to power your school, to power your university, to power your hotel, to power your factory. You can be able to rely on solar to do that. And this has been just demonstrated over time from Kenya, and therefore a lot of reference exists on that. But the major handicap has now shifted towards the affordability of these particular solutions. Unlike grid, where you can be able to be connected at a small fee, then continue paying bills on your lifetime, the adoption or acquisition of this equipment sometimes involves a small, high capital acquisition at the initial stages, which is the only one-time payment of, which is likely sometimes out of reach for most of the entrepreneurs, most of the business owners and school owners and the likes. But now, because of this, again, as I recently communicated, I've just said, we approached the Kenya Commercial Bank Group, and together we have launched a program called Solar for Schools. And with this particular solution, we are able to finance these institutions 100% collateral-free up to 7 years, funded by the expected savings that could have been used to pay for electricity from the grid in order to acquire this particular equipment 100% collateral-free without having to put up an upfront investment. And this is very, very important because it's happening at a time when the interest rates in the country for commercial services are way above 20%. But with the institutions, we have a soft spot for them, and we've been able to negotiate a very good rate of 9.75% collateral-free. And public schools actually have the ability to acquire up to 20 million worth of investment, and private schools can be able to do that up to 10 million investments. And with this, we have been able to also to solve this particular challenge, and we think we are on the road to try and ensure that schools can be able to operate affordably and afford the electricity to power the institutions and save our environment using this renewable source.
All right, as we come to a close rather of this conversation, data shows that over 70% of Kenya's electricity comes from renewable energy. Maybe just from your point of view, and as you also give us your last remarks, how exactly or where exactly are we as Kenya when it comes to renewable, the renewable energy landscape?
As a country, we have made some tremendous efforts. Actually, our current energy mix as a country, we are well off. It's about 83, moving probably towards 100%, when the current efforts in terms of Kenya COSAP, that is Kenya Off-Grid Access Program, can be implemented in around 14 marginalized counties that are available in the country. And therefore, as a country, we basically produce most of our electricity from renewable sources. I mean, geothermal, which forms the bulk of our power supply, contributes to about 46 to around 50% currently in the mix. We have hydroelectricity coming from our 7 Forks Dam projects, among others, including Chuckle, forms about, it's coming to around 36 or 26 to 36%. That one keeps on fluctuating because of droughts and effects of climate change that affects our rainfall patterns and the likes. We're also having wind, which is Lake Turkana Wind Project, among others, being the biggest contributor to another about 12%. We have solar, both in captive and on-grid utility scale contribution from different solar farms. Talk about the Kapsaret, the Kasses, the Garissa Solar Power Project, or the Garissa Wind Farm. We have the Malindi Solar Farm and the likes. So already we are making strides in contributing this particular solution to our energy mix to about between 80 to about 85%. Thermal or heavy diesel fuels form probably just between around 13%, 17%, with the lowest having been recorded around 8% in the last financial year from the IPRA data. And the challenge with this one is that our demand currently far outstrips the supply. So we are not yet able to satisfy the energy demand across. And two, our infrastructure of supply sometimes is hindered because we have not so many substations, and high voltage lines are also limited in terms of infrastructure. And because of this, most of these customers that are probably outside the major urban centers face frequent blackouts, inadequate supply, system breakdowns, in poor maintenance and response to infrastructure like transformer replacements and everything else. And because of this, we run most of our generators a lot of time negating the effects that we have contributed in ensuring that our energy mix remains over 80% in terms of renewability. And because of this, we are encouraging, and because of this partnership, we are encouraging most of our people bought by the Energy Act 2019 in terms of net metering policy and feed-in tariffs. People can be able to harness their own electricity. They can be able to consume that electricity, and probably in the near future, they can be able to sell even this particular electricity to decentralized power solutions or even back to Kenya Power, so that the energy mix generation and interchange energy trading between customers and the grid supplier can be enhanced. Okay. I want to believe that if we can be able to take advantage of this particular favorable environment in the country, because as the Ministry of Energy and the Ministry of IPRA and other authorities have made it accessible that most of the renewables, especially solar, do not attract tax and duty in terms of the equipment, making them very, very affordable, that they can be able to join hands in ensuring that we can be able to contribute to our energy generation in the country, but also ensure that we can be able to attain 100% sustainability and durability, and also ensure that our cost of electricity can really come down by playing a role on individual basis through installation of centralized and captive solar power plants across.
All right. Thank you so very much for joining us on this conversation, and for just shedding light, and for the work that you're doing in the country matters renewable energy. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Eugenia, for having us today, and have a renewed day for you. Thank you.
All right, this is where we end this particular conversation, but don't you go too far, because I'll be coming back with yet another topic, and this time we'll be talking about SMEs empowerment. Stay with us.